Hello and welcome to the Cloud Gaming Report. I'm your host Zach, and this is your source for all cloud gaming news. So guys, we have a good deal of topics this week, or this episode rather, because I don't do a weekly podcast anymore, just simply because there isn't quite enough news some weeks. Anyways, I digress. This week we have a list from NVIDIA that currently only includes one router, but will include more routers in the future of officially supported and recommended routers from NVIDIA for the GeForce Now platform. We have a small hint about PlayStation Now breaking free from the PlayStation 4 and the PC and possibly getting on more devices in the future. Nothing too major there, but just some hints about what the future might lie. From there, we have news that Charter has invested in Blade. I have some thoughts on that. And finally, there's a new update for the GeForce Now platform, and we'll talk about that at the end of this episode. So guys, without further delay, let's go ahead and start this show. Our first news piece for this episode revolves around the list of recommended routers that NVIDIA has published that are approved for the GeForce Now platform. Currently, there is only one router on this list, but there is a list of manufacturers at the bottom that are working on making gear that will be officially approved in the future by NVIDIA for the GeForce Now platform. So I'll make sure to share a link to that list so that you guys can have it in the future, and hopefully we'll see some additional devices added to it in the near future. There is one piece of hardware on the list right now, like I mentioned, and that is the Amplify by Ubiquiti. Ubiquiti is a big name in the networking world. They make a lot of small business and enterprise gear, but they are starting to get more into the consumer market. But I've used a lot of their routers and access points in the past. They've been very good, high quality gear that's been rock solid. I haven't had any hardware issues with them at all. Really, the only thing I have to do with those devices is update the firmware on a regular basis, and I've had a great experience overall with them. So it is cool to see them on the list. I do highly recommend Ubiquiti in general. I haven't actually used our Amplify hardware yet. It is a mesh router, so it has one base point and it has two access points. They kind of showcase a couple different examples where you can have a base point and use the two routers, and it kind of the signal or the networking traffic will go from the farthest access point to the next access point to the base point, and they show kind of like the preferred solution where the base point is in the middle that'll provide the lowest latency because there's less hops for that networking traffic. But it is cool in general to see NVIDIA putting some research and development money into this, because if a router is good for GeForce Now, it's highly likely that it'll be just as good for Shadow, Parsec, and other additional cloud gaming services that are going to be coming out in the future. Our next bit of news comes from PlayStationLifestyle.net. It is a very small grain of news, but it is news nonetheless. I do find it pretty interesting, and that is a job posting for a software engineer for their cloud backend for Sony. And there is one line in the job description that is pretty interesting, and that is about leading the cloud gaming revolution, putting console quality video games on any device. We do know that Microsoft is putting their Project X Cloud on mobile devices. They have made have talked quite a bit about that. So I would not be surprised at all to see Sony do the same with their PlayStation Now cloud gaming service that is actually already established and is already available right now for the PlayStation 4 and PC. So we don't really have any time frame, just a small bit of news and a little bit insight into what Sony might be doing in the future with their PlayStation Now service. I would not be surprised to see sometime in 2019 the PlayStation Now will expand the coverage of what devices it's available on, even if only in beta form right now for mobile devices. So very cool news there. Hopefully we'll see something develop from that job posting in the near future. Our next news topic revolves around Blade, the company behind Shadow, as well as the recently announced Hive community. Blade has recently received investment money from Charter, which, if you don't know, is a big telecommunication company here in the US. I don't actually know if they have reach outside of the US, but I do know that they are pretty big here in the US. With that being said, I think this is a pretty good announcement. More investment money for Blade means they can continue to fund the rollout of Shadow data centers to improve coverage of Shadow, both here in the US, but as well as worldwide. I do think Shadow is a great cloud gaming service, so having expanded coverage for Shadow will just be great news for everybody. But there is some possible negative impacts of this. Charter is, like I said, a telecommunication company, and there has been a lot of talk in 2018 about net neutrality, and the repealing of the net neutrality laws could allow companies like Charter that control our network infrastructure to take advantage of that, to charge certain companies more to transmit their data over their networks, to favor the data of certain companies over another. So hopefully there aren't any negative implications of this investment money, and hopefully we just see the positives, and that is more coverage for Shadow and more people can access Shadow. But I did want to talk about that just slightly, just because it has been a big subject, net neutrality, that is, in 2018. And we have seen a lot of these companies that control the network infrastructure investing in media companies, for example. So I did think it was important enough to talk about, but hopefully you only ever see the positive implications of this investment money. Our final news topic for this episode is the fact that NVIDIA has released their latest edition of their beta for GeForce Now, and that is version 1.16.1.2. It brings some general fixes for mouse responsiveness. For example, when you're switching between the Mac or Windows desktop into the game, they're working on improving the mouse responsiveness there, and a couple other use cases. In addition, if you're a Mac user, they have finished a bug fix for when the video stream would freeze, but the audio stream would continue. So if you update to the latest version, hopefully you won't encounter that bug anymore. So that's pretty much everything for this episode of the Cloud Gaming Report, guys. Thanks for everybody that has watched or listened to this episode. I greatly appreciate all your guys' support. So thank you for the likes, the subscribes, the favorites, whatever the action is on your favorite podcast app out there. I hope you have subscribed on it. And also if you're on YouTube, please subscribe there too. So thanks for watching or listening, guys. And until next time, Zach out.